He said, not even a low-grade fever? I'm like, no. And you know what? It's because of all that food that kept me healthy, but yet I had this sick part on my body that was unable to heal.
And I thought, like, you don't need vegetables. I'm eating, and that's all that mattered. And I had so many issues.
Amazed, and he didn't know it, but I was crying. I was just so happy that he could regain his brain.
Back by popular demand, we have Victoria Bledsoe as a guest today. Victoria is a certified massage therapist that specializes in energy medicine and reflexology. She is a master herbalist and the founder and CEO of Alchemie Botanicals, LLC. Welcome back to the show, Vicki.
Hey, Tara, it's so nice to be back. I had a great time that first time. Hopefully, we're going to have a great
Same.
time today.
Same. We're going to have a wonderful time today. And last time we really dove into herbal medicine, or plant medicine, as Vicki likes to say, during that episode. And I will link it above for you to check out after today's episode. If you missed it, definitely want to watch it. Vicki spoke a little bit about her personal health issues, and I received numerous DMs and emails about how she was able to overcome her issues and steer towards a different health trajectory. If you know me, then you know I am a fan of optimization of health, and I do believe we can heal. There are numerous reasons why we are sick, and many pathways and interventions that are likely needed to get us better. We're going to dive into Vicki's journey, her health journey. This is going to be a banger of an episode today, friends. Be sure to listen all the way to the end of today's conversation, as Vicki is going to get very granular with treatment strategies, and we are, of course, going to cover prevention. Let's not just wait around for disease to bloom. Grab a notebook and a pen. You will want to take notes. Save the episode so you can easily come back to it at a later date and rewatch or listen. Okay, Vicki, let's jump into the deep end, shall we?
All righty.
Let's first start with a recap and perhaps a deeper conversation into what you experienced, and then we will get more into the process of healing from disease.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this and where a starting point where I wanted to just dive in. So I have experienced three different serious health issues so far in my life. Hopefully, not anymore. But so one of them was years and years ago when I was 39. I had what they told me was a heart attack. I did the whole died and come back to life, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And they told me at that time that I could not eat more than, I believe it was 2,000 milligrams of sodium in a day. And so I go to the store after I leave the hospital. I was in the hospital for 3 days, and go to the store, and I'm reading these labels. And if I would have ate one dinner that was prepared, prefabricated as I call them, um, there was over 3,500 milligrams of sodium in there. And that was just supposed to be for one meal. So back then, I decided that I was going to clean up my diet and eat as fresh as food as I could find. Well, it's not that easy when you have three kids and a husband that are not ready to make that change like I was. So I made the best of it, and I kept improving and improving. And I've always had a garden. So I grew a lot of my food. And then I joined a food co-op, a natural food co-op, and would get organic foods from there. And as a result of that, not only did I heal and get better, I noticed that my kids didn't have, a runny nose or a cold as often. And so then at that time, I was seeing a homeopathic doctor, a Chinese doctor, and he was my kid's pediatrician. And so I went to him, and that was the first time that I ever experienced acupuncture. And when he told me he was going to put those needles in me, I almost freaked out because I don't like needles. So he did. And right away, I could feel there was like 37 needles in me. And I could really feel things moving around inside of me. It got warm and then it got cool. And basically, it was recirculating energy to where it should be. And so that kind of fascinated me. And then, he would talk to me about homeopathic remedies. And so for 13 years, I studied homeopathics with him. And that's how I learned how to treat my kids if they needed something, and then myself. And so that type of medicine works on like cures like. And you diagnose by the symptoms that people have, and then you can switch the different remedies around. Like when one portion of the cold or flu clears up, you can eliminate taking one of them and then add something else. So that's pretty much where I started most of how I got into food as medicine, basically. And so I kept getting better. And I lost weight. I started exercising more than what I was. And I made exercise every single day a part of my day, just like eating or breathing or sleeping. And so every day I went. Well, then time went by and I had a hysterectomy. Complete, not a complete, I still have my ovaries. But back then, they didn't do laser surgery. I mean, I had a 12-inch wide cut on my abdomen. And part of it was not healing. So again, I eliminated more things out of my diet and still yet added more colors of food to my diet. And then things started to get better. And then I did start taking some vitamin supplements because I felt like I needed a boost. And so I did that. And as soon as that scar healed up, I started walking even more and more. And I would go walking 7 miles every morning. And, I really enjoyed that. And I no longer looked at that as something that I just had to do. It became even more and more part of my schedule. And I noticed the more that I moved and eliminated more of still some food, like whole food, but it wasn't like organic. It wasn't like the best quality. So anyways, I got everything switched over to organic and kept walking. And I never felt better in my life. Well, then years went by. I moved down to Bloomington where I live now. And I had my office, and there was some issues there with the landlord. He did some things that were not cool. And so he came and he threw me against the wall, literally slammed me against the wall, and scared me so bad I had a stroke. I could not feed myself. I could not walk right. I I still have an issue with my right leg, but it's getting better after all this time. And I could not even get up to go to the bathroom by myself. So that'll tell you, it was pretty bad for about 8 months.
Yeah.
But right away, because I had all the knowledge of the food and juicing and all that kind of stuff, I had a friend who came over and she helped prepare my food for me because I could not. And then one day when I thought I was really better, she called me and said, "I'm going to be running late." I said, "Oh, I'll get this done today." So I get out my blender, put all this green stuff in there and lots of spirulina. And guess what? Was not even thinking, because I couldn't think straight back then. Turned it on without the lid. My looked like
Catastrophe.
Slimer. It looked like Slimer from Ghostbusters was in my house.
Yeah.
So she got there. She got there a little bit later, and she cleaned it up. And she goes, "Don't do it anymore." But sitting around. Number one, just from sitting around because I couldn't function normally. It also caused my body to stay relaxed so it could heal better. If you're stressed, your body's not going to heal so well. So then little bit by little bit, I would get up and go to the bathroom. I mean, at one point, she had to carry me to the bathroom. And so then I time went by and time went by. And if there was ever a time in my life where I was so sick of eating spinach, it was then. But I thank God I did. I love spinach, but a girl can only take so much.
Yeah.
So, anyways, slowly got healed up from that, and I went back to work. And when that happened, I lost everything I had.
Friends, I had to interrupt today's episode. I wanted to let you know I have expanded into health coaching, which will allow me to serve across state lines. For all of you out there that have contacted me about this, click the link in the show notes. Now, back to today's episode.
So that was quite an experience. But through it all, I kept up with my really good food and trying to move for exercise as much as I could. And then I had in my brain, as a result of that stroke, I had the crying aspect um, was not healing. And I would just bust out crying. It was uncontrollable. So I went to this local gal, Jill Bolte Taylor. She would do talks at the university, big universities, and she was employed at Indiana University. So she wrote this book called My Stroke of Insight. So I would go to her talks, and then I finally could get my courage up to go introduce myself to her. And I purchased her book, and I looked at it, and I seen a hand drawing of her head and the brain inside the cranium, and she had this little arrow just pointing to it, and it was the crying aspect. She had experienced the same thing. And so what happened is she said, just keep eating all those greens. She said that will heal. And so I didn't stop. I ate spinach, I ate Swiss chard, I ate different kales, um, edamame, anything green. And then I started adding a lot more, like orange vegetables, sweet potatoes, different squashes, carrots. And so I just kept going. And then I ended up eating lots and lots of blueberries and more spinach. And then one day, I don't know, maybe a year later, I noticed that I was not crying anymore. And then I noticed that I could think a lot clearer. But through all of that, I never took any like pharmaceutical medications. And when that happened, let me backtrack a little bit. I went to the hospital, and at the time I didn't have insurance. So they politely said, "Oh, you can go home and recover. We can't find anything wrong." And so now, in hindsight, I'm just enamored with what I've done with myself and that anybody can do to heal their body. So that was in 2008 when that happened. And so just 4 or 5 months ago, I was able, for the first time since then, to walk down the stairs more normally, other than going down the stairs one step at a time and pausing, one step at a time and pausing. So now I'm ecstatically happy. And so then pretty much I'm healed up from that. I still have a few little glitches, but I have to say I could not be happier with the result of eating all of those veggies, all of those nuts. And I cannot believe I haven't sprouted pumpkins out of my ears, because I do eat a lot of unsalted raw pumpkin seeds. I eat those every single day. And I don't eat a lot. I just pour maybe, I don't know, 2 teaspoons in my hand and just eat it. Or just toss it on a salad or on some roasted vegetables. Um, and so then, let me see. So I, of course, went back to work. And then I thought, okay, I think it's time for me to write some stuff down so I can educate other people on how to, once they are diagnosed with a disease, how to get them to work with their own self, and with a little guidance from someone like yourself or like me, and get them where they need to be, where they can function again normally. And it is a big job. You have to be very committed to yourself. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
yeah, and you have to get plenty of sleep because that's when a lot of the healing of the body happens during our sleeping hours.
Absolutely. And I'll say, Vicky, that is a lot that you went through, right? And from everything
Right.
years prior, and really starting to learn even more about nutrition and foods. And I love that you made a really clear distinction, and this is something I talk about. I talk about a lot of things every day, and this is another one on the list of things I talk about. And I don't think it's really understood enough about organic versus non-organic. And that's actually one
Right.
of the questions in for my intake through my practice is, non-organic or GMO foods versus organic. And honestly, I was in healthcare and I didn't think it mattered, right? And it
Right.
wasn't until I really started learning more about what it means if something is genetically modified or with those pesticides like our old friend glyphosate and the
Yeah.
impact that that can have on the body. So I love that you made that distinction. And it how big of a difference do you feel just that switch made in your life?
Okay. So the biggest thing that I've noticed is, um, whenever I'm in a situation where I don't have all of my food, I may be running late to get to work one day and leave my lunch sit on the counter. And then, I'll run over to the co-op and get some sort of lunch. And I didn't know it, but at the food co-op, I thought the salad bar was all organic and it's not. So one day I got a little cup of soup and I made a salad with a lot of veggies and I sat down and I ate it. And of course, the soup was just so incredibly salty. I could
Mm,
barely eat it. And so your taste buds change. Everything changes when you get rid of all those chemicals. So the biggest thing that I noticed was how much brain fog I would have and how I would get a little bit uh, not confused, but I, I just couldn't think as clearly. And I thought, boy, and this is just one meal. You know, what's
mhm,
it like when someone is always eating not the best food, uh, and they don't even know that they are not thinking straight? They don't know that they're not able to feel things physically. They can't discern mentally sometimes,
mhm,
what is going on because it's almost like, and this will sound terrible, but it's almost like cocaine. Okay. So if a person has never experienced cocaine and they try it, and of course it will disorient them a little and they feel very lackadaisical. And food is the same way, only the general population does not equate food with chemicals on to something like cocaine, the effects of what it can do to us.
mm,
And it, I would be very foggy and I noticed that I would get lethargic and I would have to lay
mhm,
down and take a nap. And and then there's times when I have had other food, it depends on what it is. I can taste metals in
mhm.
my mouth. And so I eat a lot of cilantro when that happens, and that carries the metals out of your body. So it even one meal, like I was traveling to Chicago a while back, and I didn't have time to get my food together. It was like an emergency situation, and I thought, oh, where am I going to eat?
Mhm.
So I would pull over and look up like a Chinese restaurant, and I would order like broccoli and tofu. And there is so much salt and sugar in that. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to get really tired. And I'm not kidding you, in less than an hour, I had to pull over and take a nap. And when people tell me, "Oh, also I don't have any energy. I don't feel like doing anything, but there's good movies on Netflix." That's what they're experiencing that. And they just think, "Oh, I've done too much and now I need rest." And basically what has happened is they've crashed and burned.
Exactly. I don't think enough people look at food as medicine, right? Well, there's that,
Right.
but
Mhm.
also food as poison, right? Food as, and this isn't to. I'm not, for the listener, I'm not saying this to put us into food fear. If we look at the spectrum of foods that we can eat, if I were to go back to Doritos, which was my weakness, or sweet tarts, if I
Yes.
choose that over a non-organic vegetable or salad, like which one of these two is going to have a more negative impact on my health? It's going to be the really ultra processed garbage, right? So
Mhm.
I look at it like we need to start somewhere, right? And it's, in my opinion, let's get rid of the, like, let's start with the lowest hanging fruit. So the, no pun intended, like the garbage that we're inhaling, the sodas, the artificial colors, artificial sweeteners, processed, like ultra processed sugars, and just total garbage. If somebody's done those things, that's going to get somebody tremendous difference, right? It's going to make a big difference with their
Yes.
health. But I find a lot of people who come to see me, a lot of them have already done that, right? They've exhausted what looks like an option, and it's these little more nuanced things, like, where are you getting the fruits and vegetables from? Are you getting variety, right? Or are you just eating broccoli every day and that's it, right? Broccoli
Mhm.
is one of my favorites. I do eat
Mhm.
it almost every day, but alongside lots of other vegetables and fruits.
Right.
So
You gotta maintain a rainbow of food, to get
yeah,
all the nutrients and all the minerals that we need for a functioning body and a brain. And you can't put one thing in your mouth and think, "Oh, it's going to heal my knee." It's going to heal everything. It doesn't just say, "Okay, I'm going to swim down there and fix this knee." You have to, and the same is true for whatever medications or vitamin supplements that you put in. It's going to affect your whole body, not just one area. And a
yes.
lot of people can't grasp that concept. And when I work on people, like, say, if I work on somebody's shoulder that's really damaged, as soon as there's releases in there and it starts opening up and starts feeling better and that warmth floods in there, then they're like, "Oh, the octaves in their voice change. The stress is then leaving, and then so all of that, all those kinds of things, even from a physical manipulation type thing like that, is once once the right things are happening there, the body goes, ah, and so you combine all the good food that you can find, and you just keep eating it and eating it and eating it. And I don't mean 8 hours a day. I mean, I eat pretty much when I get hungry. I don't have a set plan every day. And when I go to work, I bring a lot of greens and I bring a lot of soups. I have two little thermoses that I bring, so I have soup almost every day at work. Um, but there is another thing that I wanted to mention. So another big health issue that I had was about 6 years ago. I was going to a potluck birthday for a friend, and I lost my footing and fell down the back stairs.
Oh my goodness.
Uh, yeah, and so in a second, in one of those freak moments, I took my arm and grabbed the railing, and when I did, all the way from like up here, all the way down my side was bruised, all the way down to my knee, and I just thought, "Oh, that'll heal up. It's just badly bruised," and so it did. And so I keep eating all my greens and all my other stuff, and I got better. I felt great. I had no pain, no nothing. So I thought, that's all healed up now. So then I noticed that on my lower abdomen, it looked like it was filling up with something. It was just a pouch. So I went to the doctor and he said, "Oh, it's nothing. That'll go away." And so then another year went by and it was all across my abdomen. And so I ended up, in the night, every once in a while, I would scratch it and it got to the point where it would bleed. I didn't feel sick. I felt great. So then one day I woke up and it was really bad. I didn't even know that I had scratched myself. And so I called a friend of mine. She came over. She was a nurse. She says, "We need to get you to a surgeon." And I said, "What do you think that is?" She goes, "I don't know, but that's just not right." So anyways, I went to two different surgeons and got their opinion, and they both said pretty much the same thing. You have internal tears, and that pouch of stuff is just ick.
Mm-hmm.
Ick. And so I
Medical
said, "So
term.
what should we?" Yeah. So I said, "Well, what do we do at this point?" And, both of them said, "Do you not feel feverish?" I said, "No." And they said, "Not even a low grade fever?" I'm like, "No." And you know what? It's because of all that food that kept me healthy, but yet I had this sick part on my body that was unable to heal. So, anyways, I ended up having surgery and they cut me in half. They cut me all the way around in half and stitched me back up. And so, of course, they take photographs, and I got to see some of those photographs, and you can't unsee something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, 10 pounds of ick came
Wow.
out. And so, they closed me back up. I go home from the hospital. I had to have a lot of care. And again, um, I couldn't get up and cook. I couldn't get up and make smoothies. I couldn't do anything. And so I relied on people to bring me food, you know, um, and well meaning people. They just didn't want me to be hungry. And I'm not used to eating fried chicken and fake mashed potatoes and other stuff. I'm not used to eating beef that has been smoked with chemicals.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what? At least I didn't go hungry. So
Mm-hmm.
then what happened? I started to notice, even though at that point I was on pain medication, I still took vitamins. Uh, and once I would get up out of the chair and walk with a walker, after, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks, I would try to make myself some food and it wasn't successful. And so people still kept bringing me food. And I kept noticing that I was dwindling away. And I was like, okay, the surgery was bad enough, but now I feel so worn out. I feel so depleted and couldn't think straight. So then a few more weeks went by, and then I did get up and put a stool out by my counter, and I made a big pot of vegetable soup. And I ate that soup, I think, for 7 days. And then I would make salads. I would make a bunch of salads. And I kept after it and kept after it. And then I started eating bananas and more apples and all those kinds of things. And so I started healing up, but not only physically did I heal up, the mental part, it was staggering to me how much better I felt only after a few days of going back to my regular, organic food versus all the other stuff. And, like I said, I was just so grateful for everything because I could not even get up and walk. So now, I'm out and about running in the woods and doing all the stuff. Um, I am totally amazed over and over again how food has and will heal injuries. It improves your brain. And then, so I don't know. Nobody's ever going to tell me any different ever again in
Mm-hmm.
my life. So,
Yeah, you said so many things that really matter with the story and everything that you went through. And ultimately, we need food. Food is also, it's information for our cells in our body,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
we need to eat. That's the bottom line. We need to eat. So sometimes we might not have the option of choosing a more nutritious food if we're relying on somebody else, if we don't have, if we simply do not have the means to
Mm-hmm.
to purchase everything
Right.
organic, right? I would argue that eating organic whole foods doesn't have to be expensive. I think it's viewed that it's very expensive, but processed foods are, of course, dirt cheap, right? And fast food restaurants, although they're getting more expensive these days, it's still relatively cheap because it's, for the most part, it's not very healthy. Um, but I'm wondering, like, how did you begin the process of healing from disease, or how, like, what are some things somebody could think about, like, for I have this illness or disease or whatever, like, how does somebody begin? How did you begin?
Well, the day when I came home from the hospital with the heart issue, um, I had told my husband back then, I said, I just want you to take me to the library. So he did, and I checked out almost 40 books. And I wanted to know all about nutrition, like at a deep level. I wanted to know what foods are going to be more beneficial than others. And so that's when I started targeting, all those greens. And I will tell you, if there's one thing on this earth that I can't stand, is that curly kale. Now, I like the dinosaur kale. I just don't like that bitterness. And so, a little bit by little bit, well, at that point, I should say I never heard of kale in my life. Uh, I had never heard of arugula. That was foreign to me. And so, little bit, by reading those books, and we didn't have this big information highway that we do now, where people can
Mm-hmm.
just type anything in and find out. I mean, you really had to do your homework.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I used to go and pick strawberries, like at a U pick place.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe the amount of chemicals that are on strawberries.
Yes.
And
The
after you're
strawberries
there for a while,
they're on the dirty dozen list.
they are.
And
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 so,
yeah, their strawberries are, you need organic strawberries, but go ahead.
mhm. So now I grow my own strawberries. So every year there's a huge difference in taste. And now, like when you go to the store and they're $5 for one of those 8-ounce packages or something, part of it is white, and when you bite into it, it's white in there, in the center. That is an unripe strawberry. It's one that has been gassed to turn red, and there's literally no
Mm-hmm.
flavor. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the process of building more strawberry beds because I love strawberries. Um, I eat a lot of blueberries, and that's the
Same.
other thing. Way back then, I had heard I had went to a little health conference, and there was a speaker there, and she was talking about a food, rainbow food of the rainbow. Well, I had never heard of that back then. And so, I was taking notes, and then when I got home, I thought, well, I only eat a few of these, and there's not much color variation. And so that's when I started incorporating a bigger variety of fruit and a lot more colors. And back then, I had never had red raspberries or black raspberries. And now I eat those every single day of my life. Um, I eat tons of blueberries. I now have incorporated some bananas back into my diet because I stopped for a while. Um, and then I found out that if you make a salad with spinach and put those blueberries in there. What a good combination. So my theory is, eat a rainbow of colors, but eat the darkest colors because there's more nutrients in the darker colored plants and fruit.
Yes.
And
And
so,
Deep pigmentation.
Yep. So that's how I started, just a little bit at a time. And, way back then, everybody that was around me, if there was a cookout, it was hot dogs and bratwurst and frozen hamburgers.
All the good stuff.
And all the stuff was cooked with all the chemicals from the charcoal or all the grills and all that. And then I started noticing way back then how increasingly hard it was to go to someone's house for dinner or a cookout or whatever and not have much to eat. And nowadays, it's more predominant to me. Like I just had an emergency trip up to Chicago, and I'm up there, and they're like, dinner's on the table, and I go out there, and I sit down, and I thought, oh dear God in heaven, I cannot eat this food. And I didn't want to upset anybody, but I did. And I did it unknowingly. And I ate and everything tasted really good, but as far as nutrition wise, it wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And um, so yesterday I felt like I had a food hangover the whole day. I felt lethargic. My eyes felt very tired.
Mm-hmm.
I just spent a lot of time by myself, basically trying to recover from that. And I don't know. It's very difficult. So I generally will bring food wherever I go, but like I said, that was an emergency thing, and I didn't have time to prepare. So then, as more time went by, I noticed that I ate larger amounts of each of those foods, because before it was just like 3 or 4 bites of something. I mean, now I can take a whole thing of baby organic spinach and eat it raw, just eat it. Or I'll steam it, and throw some minced garlic on there and nuts or whatever. Um, so so now that's what I eat. And most of the time, I don't eat breakfast food for breakfast. I eat all savory food. And I feel much better when I do that. And,
Mm-hmm.
they used to say you could eat all these grains and they're good for you. Well, they are good for you. I just can't eat them because they're not good for me. And you want to talk about a challenge?
Well, I love what you said right there, and I want to make sure the listeners picked up on what you said. You said grains, they can be really good for you. They're just like good for you, like you in general. They're just not good for me, is what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that distinction needed to be repeated because all of us are unique and different. I
Mm-hmm.
too do not feel my best if I consume a high amount of grains. I do
Mm-hmm.
eat grains, but I use grains like how I used to use a vegetable, if I used a vegetable at all, which is like it used
Right.
to be my plate was all, I'm Italian from New York,
Ah.
all pasta, a whole big plate of pasta, and like half a loaf of Italian bread. So that was my meal with some grated, delicious cheese. I miss cheese on it.
Oh, I do too.
And if I was going to have a vegetable, which frankly, I only knew about corn, and it was in the can, those like niblets.
Yeah, yeah.
It
And
wasn't on
green
the
beans.
cob.
Don't forget the green
In the
beans.
land of concrete where I'm from, I'm going to tell you a funny story right after I make this point because I'm basically going to eat my words from what I'm saying, and it's very funny. But so I would have maybe like a little bit of corn, like a little tiny sprinkling. That's and I thought like you don't need vegetables. I'm eating and that's all that mattered. And I had so many issues. And frankly, I didn't think I did because I didn't have necessarily health issues like how we think of health. Like
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in the hospital as a child. I didn't have heart issues or lung issues or anything like that. I just had significant mood swings
Mm-hmm.
to the point where like they used to say like I just couldn't calm down. This is a long time ago, giving away my age
Sure.
here. And so likely some type of ADHD because of my inability to concentrate. But I had no idea, like that to me wasn't health. it was just who I was. At least that's what I
Yep.
believed, right? And
And
now,
in the same token, I'm from Chicago. I'm talking about big beef sandwiches with
oh yeah,
pepperoni pepper, red gravy, big fat French fries, just lots of pasta.
I do love
And
the pasta and French fries. Don't get me wrong.
oh, I do too. But guess what? It's not happening.
Well, and I think that one of the key takeaways here is that we are all different. So if somebody is consuming grains, let's say, whether it's
Hmm.
definitely we want organic when it comes to rice, just because of the level of toxicity that could be in molds and things like that. Definitely, it matters where it comes from. So, like if somebody's eating these foods and they feel great on them, it might not be an issue. But for others, and it definitely sounds like Vicky, you're one of those individuals. I'm one of those individuals where I notice like you, like brain fog, fatigue. I will consume these sometimes, but I think of when I'm consuming them, I think of not to the same like just the two tiny corn kernels from back in the day, but I'm taking like a little bit of it and the rest of my plate is really colorful, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about what is this food going to do for me? Because it's information, right?
Hmm.
And it's medicine to my body. So what kind of message do I want to send the cells of my body? Because it's going to impact everything, right? From
Right. Yeah.
mitochondrial function, hormone function, you know, every process in the body is impacted by what we eat. And so I think about when I'm arranging my plate, what does my body need today? So if I'm feeling more fatigued, let's say I wake up and I didn't sleep as well, that is probably not the day that I'm going to load up on a bunch of, French fries, even though when I make them, I'm using organic potatoes. I'm putting them in my air fryer. Like there's not a bunch of garbage on them. And I'm not against potatoes, right? But I look
Hmm.
at food as what do I need in that moment? So if I'm feeling potatoes, I might go for the purples, the Japanese sweet potatoes. I love those potatoes,
Oh yeah,
right? But
they're delicious. Yeah.
I wanted to eat my words like I mentioned. So I said, I had no idea like about real corn on the cob. Interestingly, corn does grow in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
When we were my grandmother, she lived to be 97. Right at the end of her life, we did have somebody move in to help take care of her, and she planted corn. There was,
Hmm.
and we had like it's Brooklyn. There's not a lot of square footage back there, right? But she somehow, I opened the door and I looked out there. I almost passed out. I'm like, oh my, like corn can grow in Brooklyn. I just thought that was it makes me smile. It makes me think about my grandmother. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's lots of other people with gardens, right? Um,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
I'm wondering, Vicky, how long does it take to get yourself well?
Well, um, I would have to say it's individual. Like you're talking about, and so it depends on if there's severe trauma involved. It depends on if you've had surgery and your body has been cut into, and your energy patterns are distorted. It depends on if they've cut through nerves, which when you have surgery, that's what they do.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of variables, and like when this is an example, like when I had the surgery and they cut my body in half, I would lay there and think, my God, they have cut me in two and put me back together. And I could feel things wanting to connect and wanting to get repaired. And it was fascinating to me, even though I was in misery.
Yes.
um, and so that took longer because, of course, that was different than, if you cut your finger and went and got two stitches. I'm talking about 650 some stitches in a
Wow.
6 hour surgery compared to like two stitches in 10 minutes. And so, but the tissue and everything has to reconnect. And so, again, if you give it the right stuff, it will heal quicker. If you don't give it good stuff, and like you said earlier, not everybody can afford everything. I mean, I understand that. Um, so I really notice now since that surgery that if I do like fall off the wagon, like when I traveled and ate some food I'm not used to, I I feel very sluggish. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, now I've got to have a pick me up to do this. And I'm not kidding you. Instead of going to a restaurant, I will go to a grocery store and buy a big container of spinach or whatever. My favorite mix is arugula and spinach.
Oh,
And
that's so good.
and I eat like I go over to the farm stop, where I vend my products, and I'll go and buy 4 big containers of microgreens and sit in the parking lot and eat 2 of those. You know, um, So how long it takes, I don't think, in essence, that everything is always going to ever heal on our body because we're humans. We stub our toe and that's like, oh, that hurts. People might not think that makes a difference, but the stress that that causes can be unbelievable. All the way to someone, let's just say someone had a brain surgery.
Mm-hmm.
My God, the cells in your body are like screaming for some food of all kinds, not only just like physical food, but relaxation, getting rid of more stress as you can. It's not always easy to let go of a stress if you're a high stress person. It's difficult. Um,
I wouldn't
and
know anything about that.
yeah, I know. Just I have to laugh at you with that. Oh yeah. So so it takes a lot of things into consideration. So I guess what I'm going to say is, again, it's individual. The bigger the boo boo, the longer it's going to take. The littler the boo boo, the shorter time it's going to take. But the thing is, when you have the big boo boos, you have to stay steady with things. You can't flip flop all the way around
Mhm.
because the new cells in your body go haywire and they flip flop around. And the tissues, the soft tissue in your body goes haywire sometimes. And
That that
so,
that's a, you brought you what you're saying really like hits the nail on the head, right? That if we had more of a traumatic, whatever it is, whether it's an injury, if it's a disease process, whatever is going on in the body, it's likely going to take longer. We're all different, so
mhm.
everybody's journey is different. But I don't believe in perfection, right?
No,
I like I'll never be perfect, and I accept it because I'm human. But then it's paying more attention to the signals from the body. So, like with your trip to Chicago, and it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Right. And I've been in a situation, well, we all have, right? Multiple times throughout our life. And it's like, well, I have to make the decision. Am I going to eat the food or not eat? And and I have to weigh it in my mind. Like, what does this look like? I do have
mhm.
some non negotiables. Like, I don't eat gluten. Shout out to my gluten video. I'll put that up there too. I just like it makes me feel absolutely terrible. I am very, very, very sensitive to gluten. It does
Yeah.
not agree with my body. So, under no circumstance, I don't, I mean, and believe me, I want to eat it, right? I want
Oh man,
the
you're not.
bread
Oh, I
that I grew
know.
up with. I
I just
want it,
had.
but
Well, I just had somebody say to me, that I think I'm better than everybody else because I've lost weight and I eat good. She really, really took offense to something I said, and I wasn't even aware that I said it. But again, when you're used to eating a cleaner diet and you're around people who don't, they feel that different energy. And when they see you fix your plate and you have the better choices on there, people can get a people can get offended by that. I guess I guess I didn't realize that until yesterday. And I was like, I said, I'm really sorry if I offended you. I said, I'm just not used to eating food like that. If you are, that's wonderful. I'm a big proponent of live and let live. And if, somebody wants to eat fast food, prepared food, that's up to them.
Well, and
And
it's also we're all coming from a different place, right? And
right.
I was probably one of the first that would either just get irritated, maybe give a dirty look, or maybe even say some snide
Yeah.
comment if anybody commented on my food choices. Because if anything, I remember I used to say, I don't have any issues. So what, or I would say, what do you care? But we're all different, like, different on a
Right.
different point of our journey. And if
And
we're not being impacted by it, then we don't know. Like you don't know these things. Like you said about the photos from the surgery,
mhm.
you can't unsee or unknow
Uh-uh.
things once you've learned them. So I didn't know the impact of my real trash diet on my body and what it was doing to my hormones, to my brain, just to
Mhm.
everything. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm, like I have something going on with my kidneys. And so I'm any like disease that I could say, somebody could tell me, well, we really shouldn't eat this type of food, or we really need to think about what you're eating. Nobody's ever talked to me about what I eat in
Right.
relation to like any symptoms because I didn't have a disease. Well, fast forward to this, right? Meaning like my lack of a body part and losing my thyroid.
Yeah.
And well, they took it. I didn't lose it, right? And I mean, I wasn't cut in half like there, but that guy slit my throat. That's
He
what he
sure did.
that's what he thought. He slit my throat. And it was, I mean, it's been quite some time since this happened, and I'm not the same. All right. I mean, granted, I'm missing a vital organ for the endocrine system, but and I'm on medication to help with that, right? Because I need medication to live. Then, the thyroid is very important to the body, but I also like it. It feels different in there, and so I, like you said, like the cells, like they have to like get back. Everything has to like reconnect and pathways. And this actually is the perfect segue into another question that I have for you. And I'm gonna ask you the question, but then I'm gonna answer part of it first, and then I'll turn the mic over to you, so to speak. What types of modalities can assist in the healing process? And I told you I'm gonna jump in here. I am definitely a huge fan of massage. Of course, I'm speaking to my massage therapist today. That it for me, and I've had 4 surgeries here from sports related crazy
Mhm.
mountain biking that I do. And,
Oh,
so
you're not
plates
crazy, are
in,
you?
plates out. Depends on who you ask. It depends on who you ask. But so I broke my collarbone. I also broke my neck before. I don't recommend that. And manipulation, it can be weird at first. Like even for me, like I do this, I can't feel anything. Like
Right.
my nerves, like it's different. But when Vicky works on me, you talked about earlier that like I don't really know, and I said this the last time, I don't really know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, like you'll say, "Did you feel that?" And most of the time, like I'm not sure, and then all of a sudden, like I'm like, "Whoa!" And sometimes, like my my nose starts running or like something, and I'm just like, "Whoa!" And I'll like stand up after you're done with me. Of course, I don't have my glass on. I want to just demonstrate it, and I'll just be like, where am I? Like, I have no idea. Like, and you'll come over, and I don't know what you do because I almost go in a trance. But you do something on my body, and all of a sudden, like everything just like I don't like it just comes into balance. So I'm guessing one of the modalities is massage
Yeah.
to
And
help.
so when people say to me, because I've been a massage therapist for 28 years, when people say to me, like, in a normal conversation, have you ever had a massage? My general answer is kind of like a couple. And um, they're like, really? And I said, yeah. I said, actually, that's what I do for a living. And they're like, you do? I said,
I had to interrupt today's conversation to let you know about a new ebook I just released, Understanding Perimenopause and Menopause. To grab your free copy, yes, my friends, it is completely free. Comment down below ebook, and my team will send you the link to download a copy. Now, back to today's episode.
And a few years ago during COVID, I was bored, which I don't usually get bored. But I think I was more tired of being alone in my house during that time without any human interaction. Um, I got out all of my appointment books for all of the years. Now, including what the people that I work on in my studio and at a sporting event that I do massage at every year, every October. Back then, so what, 3 or 4 years ago, I have done over 32,000 sessions.
Wow.
And I of course am a big proponent. I mean, when I go to get a massage, I get two a month. And if I could do one a week, I would, but I can't. And I get a 2-hour massage. So I noticed, since I've had that surgery, when I do get on somebody's massage table, it takes me a good 15 or 20 minutes just to say, okay, body, it's okay, just let go. Because sometimes I still feel tightening around all the scarring and everything. And so it does take a little bit of a toll on me. And so then all of a sudden I just go and I let go. And for the next hour and a half or so, I mean, I'm like friggin' putty. And, I usually will, go to La La Land. And the gal that I get my massages from, she scared the crap out of me one day. She does this chime thing, which I love. But I was so far in La La Land that day, and she hit that little chime. I'm not kidding you. I jumped off of that table. I was like, "Oh my God, that was so scary." And so I went from this very relaxed state of mind and body was chilled out to this whoa, and then I was like, okay, oh, we're okay. We're just, she did the chime, and so it depends on the level in which a person can, assist that therapist in just letting go and trusting. And when you go to get a massage, the first time you go, you're a nervous wreck. And then when you go regularly, number one, you look really forward to going because you know how you're going to feel. And number two, several days after that, you're going to notice even more improvements in circulation and how you think and how your physical body feels. And when you do that, you're able to get more in touch with what you actually are passionate about in your life. And there's lots and lots of people who have no passion. So I like massage for a lot of things. And so the gal that I go to, she always works on all those scars that are around my body for me. And I had talked to her about scar tissue buildup. And I started to notice some accumulation. So she does work on that for me. And she works on my feet a lot I want her to do reflexology stuff for my endocrine system. And so, like when you come and I work on you externally and internally. So reflexology is set up to work with each individual organ. And so when I would come up to like your big toe where you're ticklish, I would work around that area because that's the throat area on your foot. And so I use massage. I love massage. I think I'm like a kitten. I know why kittens purr now. And so that keeps me on track. And I do also every single Wednesday at 10:30, I go to the chiropractor. And I have finally found a chiropractor that is not cranking so hard on me. Like I'm not like a big football player. I've left more chiropractors than I can tell you because they just get too rough. So I found this gal that I really like, and she's very, very effective. And she also has helped me with my right leg and the brain. I'm trying to make that connection between my brain and my leg, and it's coming along nicely. And then I do occasionally go and get acupuncture. And if I was a little bit younger and had an awful lot of money, I'd go back to school and I would become um, an acupuncturist. And so that leads me to how I develop the energy work that I do, which you were talking about early when you said, I don't know what you're doing and I don't, and it feels
Yeah.
good. That's what that is. That is energy work at its absolute finest. And basically, like you have all the shoulder and the clavicle issues in your throat.
Mhm.
So when I work in that area specifically for you, I try to keep all of those energy channels open. And when that happens, you will get either a tingling sensation, but more often a warm sensation in there. And so that energy flow is being heading into the right direction where it needs to be. And so years ago, I got hired for 8 weeks to work on a person with a brain injury. That person was born and raised in Canada, and so French was his first language. And he had been in 3 car wrecks, and the last one, he had bought himself one of those big pickup trucks. And he said, if anybody runs into me, I'm going to be protected because I have this big truck. Well, he was driving one day in his big truck and he fell asleep and his truck rolled down a hill. His seat belt dislodged and he was
Oh my goodness.
flailing around inside of that pickup truck like clothes in a clothes dryer. So his wife was one of my regular clients and she called and said, can you help him? I said, yeah. I said, it's going to take a little time. It's not going to happen overnight. And so he was trying to fulfill his lifelong dream of being a museum curator. So he was a professor here at the university, and he didn't much like doing that. He really wanted to be a curator of a museum. So for 30 years of his life, he had kept applying to the big museums. And so when he had that accident, his head got banged around enough. He could not remember how to speak French. And he said, I have 8 weeks because, oh, Vicki, I finally got an interview at a museum in Canada. The first prerequisite is I have to speak French fluently, and I cannot remember it since that accident. So, there's no pressure on me to do anything about that. So he
No
would
pressure
come.
there.
Yeah. So he would come twice a week for 8 weeks. So about week number 7, his wife called me and she said, oh my God, Vicki, he's starting to remember his French. And I was like, okay. I said, well, I still want him to come the 3 more times because I'm going to have to level that out for him. So he did. And I would spend an hour and a half working on this man's brain and his neck and his shoulders. And then how I go down and reach underneath your sacrum. So what I do is I get that
Mhm.
energy to flow all the way up that spine and up into the brain. And along the way, it stimulates all the nerves, every organ in your body. And a lot of people are like, oh gosh, I'm so thirsty. Well, when you get your organs stimulated, you've got to have water because you'll start to get dehydrated because your organs are working and they're happy and they're at the party and they're like, okay, now I need some more liquid in here. So, anyways, he was not a water drinker at all. He thought that Pepsi and coffee were water. So we went through all that, and then I said, I need you to start eating some sweet potatoes and spinach and all this stuff. He goes, I don't like any of that. I said, do you want to get well? And oddly enough, his wife went and got all the stuff and made him eat that. So the last week number 8 came, and after I got done working on him, he sat up on the table and we were talking, and he said, Vicki, I have no way to ever repay you. And I said, good luck with your interview. And it was the next day. The next day he calls me and he said, Vicki, I'm going to Canada. And he went there, he got a little studio apartment, and I'm going to cry. So he got his little apartment, and he started his job immediately. And so he called me from Canada, and he's telling me he's totally amazed, okay? And I'm totally amazed, and he didn't know it, but I was crying. I was just so happy that he could regain his brain. And so a few weeks later, he calls me again, and I said, Sam, is there anything else that you want in life? I said, you've been doing the same thing and had so many injuries. I said, did you forget about the joy part of life? Because people need to have joy in their life. And he said, I've always wanted a log cabin in the woods, Vicki. I said, oh. I said, that's cool. That's what I want. And so we were talking a little bit, and then he says, well, I've got to go. My lunch break is over. So about a week later, he calls me again. He goes, Vicki, you are not going to believe this. I said, what? He goes, after you and I had that conversation, a guy knocked on my door one evening, and I opened the door, and there was this old man with a briefcase. He looked like he was like 100 years old. And he said, hi, I'm your grandfather's attorney. He goes, oh, come on in. So he made him a cup of coffee, I guess, and they sat down. This guy pops open his briefcase and gives this man the deed to 100 acres of his grandfather's land that had an old log cabin on it. So, anything is possible. And when you open up all of the pathways for somebody, and compression on the brain is not a good thing to experience. And when
No.
we are stressed, that's exactly what happens. The brain goes whoop and it tightens up. And so because I kept doing the cranial work and opening all that up and getting him so relaxed, it gave his brain room to heal. It opens up like a big old parachute or a big old flower. And so anyways, he's up there having fun, rebuilding the log cabin, growing a garden, all the stuff in life. And, he wrote me a letter, and I don't know what I did with it, but he did tell me, for the first time in my life, I know what joy is. And I want to tell you, I have a lot of stories like that, but I said to him, I said, every once in a while, I want you to go get some acupuncture. And so he does occasionally. He goes to get acupuncture, and he goes to a chiropractor here and there. But I talk to his wife every once in a while, and she said, well, I'm totally amazed. And I said, do you think you're amazed? How do you think I feel? And, I just learned from all of these people that I take care of and myself. And I've learned a lot of stuff in classes before, but there's nothing like taking care of people, and they are the biggest student that you could have. And,
Yes.
and so I learned stuff from everybody. And I will tell you something. I wanted to tell you this for a long time. So when you were having all your issues, and you would come and you would be upset and you tried not to cry, I was like, this girl is driving me nuts. Just let go and let the waterworks come, girl. And I imagine you did. And I told you one day, I said, oh, you're not done learning. I said, you got a long way to go. And then when was it, like 2 months later, you said, oh, I'm going back to school to be a functional medicine practitioner. I was like, there you go. And sometimes, and I mean, I can talk about energy stuff for days, but our body is big and our throat is little. So when energy is released in the trunk part of the body, and it gets up here at bottlenecks in our throat, and it can make you feel like tightness. It can make you feel like you got frog in your throat. And after a while, that just sits there. And, the cells start forming a little mass. And it can't go anywhere. It's kind of like it's just, concealed in a capsule in there. And then stuff happens like you went through. But you are extremely proactive in taking care of yourself. And, I mean, look where you're at now. Look where I'm at now. And, here we are trying to inform people and teach people how to get started, how to stick with it, and just keep going, because it never stops. You can't do a 6-week program and go off of it and expect a good result. It has to be a lifelong change.
Yeah,
And
this is not a diet.
no, it's
This
not
is
a diet.
this is a lifestyle change, and it doesn't have to be hard.
No,
Frankly, I I eat better than I ever have in my life, and not just that I'm eating more nutritious foods. I love what I eat. Everything
right.
tastes so good. I look forward to it. Eating is very pleasurable, and so many people have asked me, "Don't you miss enjoying your meals?" Like,
Oh, I
I don't
know.
think I ever enjoyed them before. I
Yeah,
literally was eating because I was hangry, because I
right.
was on a roller coaster with the garbage food that I was eating, but I never really, I mean, I it was never that like feeling of eating and literally feeling the nutrients
Right. And
going throughout my body.
one word comes to my mind for that feeling, if you could explain it in a word, is vibrant. You feel so
Yes.
vibrant, like your cells are dancing and we're having a party. And, it takes a good while to get to that. But once you get there and then you have to, fall off your wagon to eat something else because there's nothing else, boy, you can't stand the other food anymore. It's not, it doesn't taste good. It's not fun. It's void of nutrients. And then you
Yes.
you you get a sense of, I used to eat that crap. And I'm not
Yeah.
kidding. My mother, when I was growing up, used to make the best friggin' pizza ever. And now I can make the best pizza ever. And my son-in-law says I have world famous pizza. Well, I want to tell you what, it's damn good pizza. I just can't eat it anymore. So I am learning how to modify that crust, because I, in particular, cannot have grains. So I found a recipe with like almond flour and xanthan gum, and then I find out that xanthan gum is really instrumental in keeping blood sugar levels low. And then I add a pinch of like blue salt or some pink salt for the nutrients, and then I add herbs. I so basically I take this bland piece of crap that it's horrible. It's like cardboard. Then I add all these other things to it that are really good, and it brings it to life. And so then that's what I use for my little bitty personal pizzas. And then I like nutritional yeast in place of cheese. So my next magic trick that I'm going to try is making homemade cheese out of cashews. And I like to
I'm
get,
looking forward to that.
yeah, you're going to have to come over. Um,
Yeah.
so now when I have pizza, it's like thick because it's stacked up with vegetables. And I'm really a big fan of red bell peppers. They have something in there that's magic for me. And so I eat spicy food. Spicy food is good for metabolism. Um, I don't eat spicy food in the way that it burns my tongue or hurts my stomach or anything like that. I've figured out a blend for myself that suits me just well, perfectly.
Mhm.
And my son says one time, he goes, "Mom, I think you should draw out some lines like cocaine and snort that hot pepper you make." And I'm like, "Oh, you're real funny, Joe." But I do eat a lot of it. And you know what? I like that warm sensation in my body too from it. And I eat when I make that powder myself. I dehydrate everything, grind it up, and just put it in a shaker bottle. And then sometimes if I'm going to be making like food prep stuff, I'll just take a bowl, put the hot pepper in there, put like hemp nut seeds in there, different things like that, nutritional yeast, and just sprinkle it on. And so I've also learned how to make basically nacho cheese out of a potato, a carrot, and cashews. And I had to play with that recipe, and now it tastes good now, and it's good for you. But I
It's much
can't eat.
better than that fake, like, what kind was that? I used to love that. Like,
Oh, the
you know,
melty stuff. Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
melty stuff, like at Jones Beach growing up, like my mom, we'd always go to like the dining area, and I always got nachos. Really nutritious. So the garbage chips and that fake cheese. It was really good. I remember it being good.
Yeah.
I can't imagine ever eating that again. And I'm going to have to try your nacho cheese recipe. It
Okay.
sounds
Come on.
delicious. It sounds delicious. I'm expecting that for when I get a massage next time.
Okay. So I also wanted to say, a lot of people can't afford those modalities. And so I started suggesting to people, if you want to get a massage once a month, you take $25 out of your weekly paycheck and put it in an envelope. You do that for 4 weeks, and then you come and get a massage. Um, and then when I point out very gently and very lovingly to people, you can do all these things that you think you can't afford. I
Mm-hmm.
said, how much is that coffee that you get 4 times a day from Starbucks? That's more than $25, I think. And
Oh, yeah.
then I don't drink that, so I don't know. I got iced tea from there one time, and I thought, my God, I can't drink this, can't drink it. It was green tea. Mm-mm,
Well,
mm-mm.
when it comes to what somebody chooses to spend their money on, that is a choice a lot of
It,
times.
yes,
And
and
what is important to somebody, right?
yeah,
Does somebody want health? I always ask two very important questions with anybody that I work with. And frankly, I ask it more than once. And I now, I also ask people to write it down, right?
yeah.
And it's, what do you want? Like, what do you want? Like, why are you coming to see me? What do you want and why? Why do you want it?
What outcome do you want for yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. Like if somebody says, I want to lose weight, I'm like, okay, why? Why do you want to lose weight? What do you How do you feel that will impact your life? We need to tie it to more than just something up here, some vague goal versus, like, for me, right? I was really just nosediving. You remember, you saw me during it was
Hmm.
that was a
Yeah.
that was I want to say it was probably the hardest thing I've ever been through, but I don't know. I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot, but it was I feel like it was definitely the scariest. I
Hmm.
It was so scary because I felt like I didn't have any hope. So then
Yeah.
I really had to get really solid with what I
Hmm.
want because otherwise I am not going to achieve it. So what did I want? I wanted to be able to be mobile. I didn't
Yep.
want to be in a wheelchair. I didn't want to be tethered to a dialysis machine like my dad was. And he died in his 50s. I'm turning 50 this year. So I know I want to be mobile. I want to be able to
Hmm.
play with my grandchildren. I want to be able to get down on the floor and do things. I want to be able to
Right.
still ride my bike. And we have to visualize it. And that time I could barely walk, right? I felt
Right.
so lousy and I didn't believe that I had a future at all. And frankly, I was told I didn't have a future because of my garbage genes. Thanks, mom and
Hmm.
dad. But
Yeah. Yeah.
genes are just they're a piece of the puzzle, but it's what we do, what we choose. So I could have
Hmm.
chosen to disregard sleep because that was one of my biggest issues. I'm like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I could have chosen to disregard stress management. I've lived in a state of perpetual stress from as long as I can remember. And I believed, I thrive under stress and pressure. And, I'm living in that state where my body's almost doing this because I have so much anxiety that somebody's like this, what's it doing to the immune system and the
Right.
rest of the body?
It's
There's
all
so
it is
many
just weakening it.
Yeah, there's so many variables that can impact our health. So I had to get really real with myself. Frankly,
Hmm.
look myself in the mirror and say, what do you want?
Yep.
Because if that's what I actually want, I am going to have to do something different. If what I'm
Right.
doing got me on this road, right? And there's so many variables, right? And I don't believe in beating ourselves up. There's so many contributing things. Some of them might be out of our control, right? Like
Hmm.
genes or you getting thrown against the wall, right? Like
Hmm.
some things are like it's some other reason, a person or situation, right?
Hmm.
But we have a huge impact. You could have chosen to just say, well, what does it matter? I'm sick now. I can't do all these things. So I'm just going to sit down and I'm just going to eat fast food because it's easier. But you chose a different pathway because you had a solid reason for doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
you knew that these, like what we put in our body matters. And frankly, that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you today, because I don't think enough people understand how vitally important food is for more than just calories and for energy, right? And
Right.
we really talked a lot about disease, dysfunction, and like if we've already acquired something, right? Like you, the different things you went through, me with my thyroid. I'm a fan of, what about if we get on a different road before disease starts? So can you speak a little bit about ways like disease prevention?
Sure. So say that a person doesn't eat a very healthy diet, okay? And in today's world, that's a lot of people, and that's okay. So one day, Susie Bell says, I'm 40 years old. I want to feel good when I age. And so Susie, starts thinking about, okay, how do I make changes? How do I get myself to stay feeling good and how to prevent disease? And so just with thoughts, and then it becomes outward questions to say, like a friend you have at lunch, and Susie Bell might be telling Janie girl, I'm going to start changing my life. And so then she does. So a little bit at a time, she will eliminate some stuff and add the better choices. And then before you know it, Susie Bell is 65 years old and feels like $1 million. And so at any given time, any human being can take it upon themselves to start changing their lifestyle into a healthier one so they can feel better in their, when they start aging. Now,
Mhm.
tomorrow I'm going to be 66 years old, which I just cannot fathom because I just don't feel like it. I feel better now than I did when I was 20, 25.
Well, you don't look it.
Thanks. So I guess what I'm saying is people can consciously take it upon themselves before they get an illness or they have a serious injury to improve their cellular condition, to improve the flexibility of their muscles, their muscle tissue. They can improve and keep their brain and their thoughts healthy. I mean, people who are negative all the time and they're mean to people, those people think that there's nothing wrong with them. They have imbalances, whether it's they can correct it with food or get a little help otherwise. Um, but as long as people start taking the first step for their own self, and like you say, for the right reasons, what is that outcome that they want? So, like, say if people listen to this and they say, oh, I think I'm going to start doing that. I want to change my eating patterns and lifestyle. That's how it starts. That's just
Mhm.
how it starts. Is That's how you prevent disease. That's how you prevent illness. And sometimes try as hard as we may, as hard as we might, we can still get something. Something can happen to us.
Mhm.
A lot of times, it's just our thoughts that designate what we're going to do next in our life.
Mhm.
And once you start having a new thought, the race is on. Here comes the good food. Here comes more exercise. And yesterday, um, when I was in Chicago, I went up to help take care of my aunt, and it was this emergency type thing. My aunt, for many years, has been overweight, and she has always enjoyed pasta. Buttered noodles. Oh my God, they're so freaking good. And so, she gained weight, and then, she had knee surgeries. She's probably going to kill me for saying all this. But I got to tell you, she said something to me yesterday that has changed my life. So I had brought my massage table with, and I'm working on her, and I worked on her 2 days in a row. And she says to me, you know, Vic, I just want to tell you something. Remember when you were a teenager and I was a little bit older and we used to sleep overnight at Grandma's house and make Chef Boyardee pizzas and popcorn and dance to the Beach Boys? I said, yeah. She goes, those were some of the funnest times of my life. And she says, and for a lot of years now, I haven't even hardly been able to walk so well. And she goes, and if there's one thing that I want to do before I die is I want to get up and dance. And I looked at her, and we have silly personalities. I said, well, what the hell are you waiting on? Let's get busy here. So then yesterday, before I headed back home here to Bloomington, she says to me, you know, she says, thanks for telling me about that pasta and how it converts to sugar in my body and all that buttered bread, like Wonder Bread type shit. Sorry. So I said, you're welcome. And so by the time I got all of my equipment packed up and was loading it up, they were going to have dinner and they were going to have tacos. And I thought, oh God, that smells so good. I want to eat all of it. But I needed to get on the road. And so I could hear her out in the kitchen, and someone said to her, what kind of taco shells do you want? She goes, I don't want any. I'll just have a bowl with lettuce and all the stuff in it. And the night before, she had a huge bowl of buttered noodles. And she says, I'm ready to try just about anything so I can get up and dance again. So she's lost 65 pounds. And when I got there, I didn't realize that she had lost 65 pounds. So she is, I think she's 5 or 6 years older than I am. And now, for the first time, she says, I'm going to do what it takes to get better. I want to dance. And I says, well, the dance floor is waiting and the Watusi is on. And she's like, oh God, wouldn't that be fun if we could dance together? I said, well, I'm going to be coming back up here pretty soon, so you better get your dancing shoes on. And so, she's had some severe health issues too. And, but to hear her say that, it just blew me away. And, here's a person, you know, that's overweight and is sick of feeling like crap. And boy, I want to tell you what, she has made my year so far. So,
Well, I love that story, right? Because I think so often we feel like we've progressed down a pathway, a diseased pathway, so to speak, and we don't feel good, and we're on one medication or three medications or 10 medications, whatever, and we feel like at this point there's nothing, like, it doesn't matter, right? There's nothing we can do. We're already diseased. But I do believe we can shift trajectories. We can shift. And the first thing that has to happen, or the first body part, right, that has to be involved is this, that I
mm-hmm,
always begin any type of work with all of the numerous wonderful individuals that I work with by talking about our thoughts. Because if somebody doesn't believe, like I thought I was hopeless for a period of time. And it was a
mm-hmm,
very, very dark period of my life, right?
mm-hmm,
If somebody doesn't believe it, it won't happen. And not all, I believe it won't happen because we're sending messages throughout the body, and the body just simply, it won't happen. But it
right.
also won't happen. That's one part of it. So definitely our thoughts, our microbiome hears our thoughts, our cells hear our thoughts. I mean, it's us, right?
Yeah.
Everything is living inside of us, right? And it's a part of us. But the other component of that is, if somebody doesn't believe it, they are not going to take the necessary steps, make
Mm-mm.
the necessary changes for it to occur, right?
And you
So
know
if
what? That that's a perfect way to put that, because everything starts with a single thought. And
yeah,
so let me real quick explain this. I learned this years ago, that if you took a blank piece of paper and you put a dot in the center. And you look at that, and then you start drawing lines of what you want to add, what you want to take away. You're rebuilding something. Now, on the same token, that one dot can be a cancerous cell. And if you're not doing anything to kill that cell, it keeps growing and growing. And then the next thing you know, there's a cluster. And then, the doctor's telling you, this is what we're going to do to you. And sometimes it does have to happen. But if you start eating certain things to basically choke and kill off those cells, that's how cancer can go away. But everything, one thought starts with one dot. One illness starts with the same dot. It just depends on what you want to do with your dot. Do you want to flourish? Do you want to stay sick? And so, when I did explain that to a lady one time that had cancer, and she called me the next day and she goes, you're just brilliant to say that to me. So she ended up going to Dr. Max Gerson's place down in New Mexico. And they do all kinds of cool stuff down there for cancer patients. And so, unfortunately, Dr. Gerson passed away, and his daughter Charlotte had took over everything. And the government has Dr. Max Gerson's findings and successes locked up in a locker in Washington and will not allow it for public knowledge. And I just happened to hear years and years ago when Johnny Carson was on the air, Dr. Gerson was a guest on there. And man, that was a long time ago. So I go on YouTube and look up Charlotte and Max Gerson. And I continue to learn. I will never stop learning. And so yeah, it's an individual thing, disease or health is. So it depends on what side of the spectrum you want to be on.
And just because we're doing everything right doesn't mean, like you mentioned this earlier, something may happen, right? So even somebody that's doing all the things, disease is possible in anyone, right?
Right.
But I do believe, with every fiber of my being, I do believe that the severity of it, the way in which the body responds if we are doing a treatment or whatever, right, is directly impacted by what we do. So, like for me, I was already doing so many things and checking the boxes, but I wasn't doing as many things as I could have, right? And again, I don't believe in perfection. That's a really significant box to put ourselves in, that no matter what, I'm never going to deviate. Like, I feel like that itself could be a huge stressor, and stress matters because honestly, everything matters, right? We're talking about nutrition, but there's so many components of health, of avoiding dis-ease. But when it comes to like the fundamentals, like what could make a significant impact with what's happening in the body, it's right up there.
Food can either be life or death. And so it depends on what each person would like to experience. And a constant, steady diet of not nutritionally sound food is a long, slow death. And healthy, colorful food that's vibrant, that's where that comes from, that whole rainbow food eating thing. You eat a rainbow, and you know what? Up here, you have, as my mother used to say, the world by the ass. If you can't think straight, things are not making sense, that should tell you right there, there's not a pill in the world that's going to fix that. And that's the thing. For many years of my life, I hear people say, well, I wish they would make a diet pill. And my general smart-ass response would be, well, why don't you quit force feeding yourself and go for a walk? I mean, the other thing is, for people who are ready to want to make changes and get started, every single day, I don't care if it's in the morning, on your lunch break, or in the evening, take a brisk walk to get started. You might not be able to run. You might not be able to go swim across the lake, but you start somewhere. You know, start with the dark fruits and the dark greens and all of that. And there's ways to make that food that you're not used to palatable. You know, you can put a little something on there. I'm not talking about Hidden Valley Ranch dressing either. That's another topic.
No,
Um,
that's
but
another
yeah,
day.
yeah, you take tiny steps to get somewhere. But if you don't take the first step, you're not going nowhere.
Vicki, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm sure the listeners and viewers have been thrilled to hear what you have to say. And we might have to, I don't know, make a series out of this and bring you back on because there's so many. We could talk all day. We do. When we
Yeah,
talk, we get together, it's hours.
and you know what? There's so many things to talk about. You know, let's do it. Let's make it a regular thing if you want to. I'm up for
I,
it.
I say I
But I
say
have a
let's do
client.
it. And if you're watching the YouTube, comment down below what you want to hear Vicki speak about. She's a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much, Vicki, for coming on the show today.
And you know, thanks so much. I I think this is good. I feel like this was good today, and I'm very appreciative when you asked me to come on. So thank you.